This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Please be aware I am not a medical expert, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. Hey everyone! Welcome to the Eat, Explore, Love podcast. I'm Ashley. This podcast is based off of my blog of the same name, Eat, Explore, Love. It talks about the unique challenges in traveling around the world when you have celiac disease. Due to sort of popular demand, I decided to also record a podcast to delve a little deeper into my travels and the lessons learned along the way. I am someone that is easily inspired, but I am also intimidated by my guest of this episode of Eat, Explore, Love the podcast. Today, I chat with Pamela Wagner, a person that cannot be put into any box. She has accomplished quite a bit, including having traveled to 100 different countries. She has multiple degrees, teaches at Vienna University of Economics and Business for bachelor's and master's students. She is also one of only 2 recipients of the Tony Elumelu Foundation Award for her mentoring engagement of entrepreneurs in Ghana and Nigeria. In 2017, Pamela was honored as one of Forbes 30 Under 30 list makers for Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. These are just some of the things that Pamela has been able to accomplish. We used the opportunity in our chat together today to discuss career growth and how things are evolving in the workspace. Without further ado, here's our conversation. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining on this podcast episode. I feel so lucky to be able to chat and speak with you today. You are super impressive, as I told you right before I hit the record button. For those of us that are still getting to know you, or for those that don't know you at all, would you mind giving us a little brief introduction and sum up your life somehow in just a couple minutes?
Okay, I'll try. So what usually helps people to kind of like get some context around my story is understanding that I didn't grow up with, riches. I didn't grow up with a lot of network or, opportunities being like on my way. Like I had to work for everything and establish it. And so there were a lot of things that I couldn't do growing up for various reasons, or I wasn't allowed to do. And one of those, for example, was I couldn't study abroad because we just didn't have the money. I didn't know how to travel or how to apply for scholarships even. And so I decided to stay in Vienna, which is where I was born, study for free here because we don't pay for university here, and then work abroad and then use the money that I earned during working for traveling. And so that's then what ended up happening. Now today I know that I used visualization very early on in my life. And fast forward, I did my first bachelor's in Austria. I did my master's in Dubai and Shanghai, then worked at Google in Ireland. And shortly after went to found my own advertising agency, which I've had now for over 8 years. And during that time, I've traveled extensively and pretty much been running the company from all over the world. So we have clients all over the world, and we also have a team all over the world. And from the beginning, I kept it in a way that I said I wanted to work from wherever, whenever, however, and with whoever, because that was what I defined as like the ultimate freedom for myself.
That's fantastic. And I know that you've made a couple of 30 under 30 lists. I am turning 29 literally a week from today. So my time, it looks like I'm not making any 30 under 30 lists, but my time is up. But so I'm super impressed by that. When you were deciding, and I know that you speak a bunch of different languages, you've got several degrees. Am I correct when I'm saying
Yeah,
that? How many degrees do you have? Just to brag.
3.
Three? That's better than my one.
It just is. I try to really not get into comparisons, which is, I know, sounds silly when other people hear me say that, but I think we live in a world where you do not even need 1 degree anymore to do whatever you want. So,
I was
yeah.
just having that discussion with my grandparents the other day about how it's all changing. So I completely agree with you. What was the motivating factor in what is it inside of you that allows you to get all these different degrees when you don't necessarily probably need them, where you're making a 30 under 30 list, where you're running your own advertising agency, which is something that I dream about and wouldn't even know the first steps to do, but you just make a dream happen. I also feel like we could do a whole other episode just dedicated to your upbringing in Vienna. So we'll put a pin in that and hopefully we get to touch on that. But what do you feel is that thing inside you that propels you to be able to accomplish so much in such a short period of time? Because 30 years isn't a long time, and I don't know how old you are, and it's none of my business, but you look not far from 30. So I'm very impressed by you. So how do you do it?
Thank you. And I'm pretty open with my age. I'm 32. So it's, I grew up with this. Well, you finish school and then you do university. So that was pretty much the path that I was given from my parents and my family, and it made sense. And I appreciate that I was kind of like put into that direction because I finished school 2 to 3 years earlier than everybody because I skipped 2 grades. So I was 16 when I finished high school.
Wow.
And I had no idea what I wanted to do with life at that age. And I don't think anybody knows. I mean, there's a few people, and I have one of these in my family where is my niece, and she knew from her earliest age that she wanted to be a vet, right? She always wanted to be a doctor for animals. And so that's what she's doing now. But most people really don't know. And so I went ahead and studied what you study when you don't know what you want to study. You study business and keep it very general. And then for my master's, I still did almost the same. Whereas my family was like, well, just a bachelor's degree is worthless. You should add a master's on top. And so I was like, well, okay, but then I want to do it at this one university in Dubai and Shanghai. So I kind of like negotiated it with them. And I did that and so yeah, I graduated with like a master's, where I always say my master's was my practical bachelor's degree. So I was very thankful that I did it. But I also knew very early onwards that what really counts was my work experience on the side. And so fast forward, why I got the third degree is because when I was 16, my actual dream was to study at Harvard. But again, I didn't know how to do it, didn't know how to come up with the money, how to go about scholarships. I mean, back then it was a way different time, right? This was 2008.
Right.
And so, yeah, then I finally got to a point in my life where I had the money where I could pay for the degree because I worked, and I felt like, well, I had the right credentials and I was enough to apply. So, yeah, I did it, and I also applied, like I did the degree at the Harvard Extension School, not at Harvard University directly. And the main reason for that is I don't like cold weather. So if I had to spend a year or two in Boston winter, I was like, for my life, am I not going to do this? So I was like, well, what option do we have to still study at Harvard, keep my business running, maybe not doing another studies full time, and maybe visit Boston in the summer or something. And so that's why I then did the degree at the extension school, because that exactly offered me that combination. Yeah, and it also felt like in terms of psychology, I'd done a lot in personal development over the past like 15 years. And so it felt like I could add the academic background to the personal experience that I had gathered.
So you spoke about that you are setting up your life and your agency is, I'm assuming that your company is remote based, that everybody works remotely so that they have the option and the opportunity to
Yeah.
work from wherever. Why is that? Because we've already kind of touched on that. We're in a world where the world that our parents grew up in, where you had to go to college, you had to get a degree, you had to get that
Yeah.
piece of paper, is what I was always told. And we're kind of in the beginning rumblings of you don't necessarily need it. It's about who you know,
Yeah.
and what you know is just helpful for the who you know, and the who you know gets you that opportunity in the door.
Yeah.
Um, why is it so important to you that you have your business set up this way, where the world is essentially your company's oyster?
So while I was in university, I worked with a student organization, and that was really my first experience to work location dependently because I wanted to engage with as many different cultures as possible. And so there were different opportunities available to engage within that student organization. So, and I started noticing how powerful it is to not just work with people from different cultures, but to actually be in that location, to be in other countries. Like I noticed how good that was for my personality. And so at the same time, I also noticed when I was working at Google is that even though, working at Google is nice and everything, but if I need to do the same thing every day, get up at the same time, start work at the same time, leave it at the same time, I don't do well with that. I need variety. I need different spaces. And especially like one thing I figured that works for me is I like beautiful spaces. So I specifically look out for cafes or coffee shops that look nice, for co-working spaces that maybe have a rooftop or something, right? And so that's what I focus on because I noticed when I have that, I automatically have a much better output of my work. And so that's then how this whole like location dependent thing came to be. And I mean, 8-9 years ago, I thought I was already late to the trend. Turns out now I was kind of early, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's now more possible than ever, and I think it's a beautiful opportunity that we have.
And do you feel that you get more people wanting to work at your company because you allow for that, and you're getting employees that are maybe perhaps putting their best foot forward? Because what I'm noticing is all the companies are trying to bring it back to us going into the office and losing the remote space. So if your company is still fully remote, it's one of the rare companies now that's remaining. So how do you find that balance? How are you finding the quality of colleague that you're getting walking through your doors, metaphorical doors?
So I have been teaching at university since 2018, and that gives me the huge advantage that I have an incredible access to new talent. So most or quite a few of my employees have been former students of mine.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like that even the company was like completely new to them. They'd already interacted with me to some extent, which makes the hiring process much easier and very different.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that they appreciate. And there was one of my team members who very much appreciated the location dependent lifestyle, but also where I noticed for young people, it's sometimes extremely important to have that in-office space because of the fact that you can ask people around you quickly, that you can socialize, that you can build these connections. So starting your career, I think it's extremely important that you have that office time. Of course, there's some people who are more like introverted, and then I'm like, okay, it's all right to have like more flexible, a hybrid work model or whatever. But for example, for onboarding, I talked with people who had onboarding at, for example, Google before and then during the last 3 years. And everybody who had it during the last 3 years did not like it because it
Okay.
was not the same experience. And I'm still in touch with like some of the people I was in like what we call the new Google group. I'm still in touch with their close friends, business partners, and so on. So they're, as with everything, there's disadvantages and advantages. And I think it comes down to really honestly for the company knowing what works for them as well as for the employees, and then communicating that and hopefully finding a common ground.
That's really interesting. I'm finding, because I said, I think we spoke about this before we started recording. I'm kind of at a crossroads in my own career where I've actually been working in advertising for quite a bit of time. And I was working in pharmaceutical agencies and I wasn't loving what I was doing. And I was so appreciative of the fact that I was working remotely, because if I was getting really fried and unproductive and just kind of to your point of doing the same mundane thing over and over again wasn't servicing you at a certain point, I could go do something really quick on the side for my creative outlet and then come back and be way more productive at my job and be able to do that back and forth. And by the time they were starting to force people to come back into the office, I had moved to Europe. That job now no longer exists. And as I'm applying for jobs, like I said, everybody wants everybody back in the office every single day. And I've learned I'm just not productive that way, especially because I work in video production. And as I'm sure you know, but the people that are listening don't know, it ebbs and flows in video production. It's not exactly consistent. So on the days where I'm just bored out of my mind and I have to sit at a desk, I'm not the most productive employee because I'm just staring at a computer screen. Whereas if I'm working from home, I feel like I can go and do research and look at things that might seem irrelevant to everybody else, and they're judging for me and telling me I'm not being productive, but actually I'm being quite productive. I'm getting inspired by ideas to apply to the next project. So I'm actually starting to go look the freelance route and be a freelance video producer to allow for that flexibility still. If you were to give advice to me or someone that is in a similar position to me, what do you feel that people should do that is empowering them in their own careers, of how they take charge and do what is best for them? And if it doesn't exist, do they just create it on their own, create their own business? Is it just that simple?
You mean if the job doesn't exist?
If the company doesn't exist of what they're looking for.
So I would take it a step back and kind of like say, ask yourself honestly, what is it that you're feeling right now is the best next step? Not that you're thinking, because sometimes we think too much and we overthink things. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to know what you want to do in 5-10 years along the road, except you're planning for finances, right? But other than that, like what you feel is the next step. And if you're feeling like, yeah, I'm really feeling drawn towards like that freelance thing, well, go on freelancer platforms or use LinkedIn. Like there's so many ways to get clients, and then just get started with it. I mean, I got started with like my goal in the beginning was, and what I did is write every day to 3 freelance projects on Upwork. That's what I did. And I still sometimes apply the same principle of consistency to certain other things that I do. And that really helps like take those small steps. And the other aspect is like really be clear on what you want. Mm-hmm. If we're not clear, then our brain sends out the signals that we're not clear, and we're always going to get presented with 2 different or even 3 or 4 or more different opportunities. But if you're clear and saying, okay, I want to be a freelancer or maybe create my own ad agency, how does that look like? Where would you work from? With who would you work? When would you work? How would the rest of your life be, right? Would you work out? Would you paint? Would you, whatever you would do, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say focus on starting to create that, because there's one thing that I really hope that people are going to understand and take away is that whatever you tell yourself and in your mind is what you're going to see around you. And I thankfully, I discovered that very early, and where I started testing it. And you can use a little thing in your mind, like instead of saying, oh, there is like no companies out there that would be a fit. Well, I would look at, okay, what's a company that would be a fit? Well, a company that is based in Europe, a company that offers XYZ, and I would literally go look for these things to start retraining my mind that, hey, these things exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Processing what you're saying. So another thing that I feel like is very impressive that I'm gonna project and then you could tell me that I'm wrong. So when I look at you and that you're in your early 30s, you're only 32, that you are a young female and you're empowered and you have all these, you're a teacher, you run a company, you have all these things. The biggest struggle I come across is I'm also in my late 20s. I look very young. I come with a lot of power to me when I walk into a room. Not a negative aggressive, but I am empowered. You probably know where I'm going with what I'm about to ask you, but do you come across things where people kind of toss you to the side and say, "Oh, well, you're young, you don't know," or I come across this with older men in particular, where I will give an opinion and they will tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, even though I'm an Emmy award-winning producer. I do know what I'm talking about. I didn't get that just with a pretty face. I had to put effort in. I had to be smart. And you are obviously as well very accomplished. How do you navigate that? And if so, how do you navigate that when you come across it?
It cannot affect me unless I allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always refused to take anything about me as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
So saying, for example, oh, because I'm a woman, I'm disadvantaged XYZ. I did not focus on that because it wasn't a story that would be helpful to me.
Right.
And the next step I didn't take is I asked myself, well, is this actually the right room for me to be in?
Right.
Am I valued here? And if I'm not valued, I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Or I reflect, well, did this trigger something in me that I still need to work on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or is there a story that I have, right? So for example, maybe there's a story that says, older white men don't trust me because I'm young, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I would go, okay, how could I rephrase this? And I literally have one of these beliefs written down now that I'm practicing, which is people in power love to support me and always lift me up. Because sometimes you also have weird beliefs about people in power as well, right? And so I just look at what's my story there and how can I reframe it?
Mm-hmm.
If I do not have the chance to leave the room, which is often the case in an employment, right?
Right.
But that oftentimes can also shift. And what I've seen, trust me, I've been in so many situations where I wish I would have reacted differently because my story was what determined the outcome, not what the other person meant.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I also had to learn is that, and I'm still learning that, to own that power that we have, right? To say, no, I'm here. And part of that for me was learning to deal with conflict, because I've had conflict for more than the first half of my life, a lot. So much to the extent that I said in my 20s, I don't want conflict anymore.
Right.
Which prevented me from having the hard conversations. And
Mm-hmm.
so now I'm relearning that, I'm reincorporating that, I'm having these like hard conversations, and it turns out we're still fine, you know? So yeah, I would literally look at what's the story, am I valued here? And what can I do to change that? And is it something that I should change, or is it better sometimes just when I leave? Is it a pointer in a different direction?
Absolutely. I often feel it whenever now I've gotten to a point where whenever someone brings up my age or my gender, I know I've won whatever discussion we're in, because if you're going to like such a basic thing of what, it's so silly and irrelevant of what I look like and what age I am, that if that's the only thing you've got to combat whatever I'm saying to you, that means you've got nothing in your toolbox to be able to communicate with me. And that's so sad for you. um, So sorry, it looked like, were you about to?
Yeah. And it's I think also understanding in that moment that probably the other person is very concerned right now. That maybe there's even a fear that they have, right?
Mhm.
Maybe they're afraid of saying I'm wrong. Maybe they're afraid of saying, hey, you actually had a better idea. So
Right.
there's so many things at play that often don't even have anything to do with us.
Which is such a shame that when we're in a creative field, that you have to be willing to say that you're wrong and the best idea wins. Otherwise, what are you doing in this industry? You don't belong here. Go someplace else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Huh, with and my biggest the thing that I feel like I've gotten, because I can't say I've been based in Italy, but I've really been living in Europe for the past year. And I think the biggest growing that I've had is I've always been really comfortable with the uncomfortable, but I've really relished in the discomfort and having to go and experience different cultures, because that's where I've grown the most. Now, is that also plays a part in why you like to be able to work from wherever and be able to travel around so much? Does that play a part in that? And because you mentioned that you're trying to grow in that way, or is it just nice to go look at different locations and helps inspire you?
So I started noticing fairly quickly that, well, and fairly quickly, I'm saying at the end of my teenage years, that the way I grew up is not how everybody grew up. The way I think is not how everybody thinks. And I grew up with a lot of knowing how not to do a lot of things, but not knowing how to do a lot of things. And so I wanted to explore other cultures to see what other attitudes and characteristics are there that I could start incorporating for myself, right? So, for example, in Austria, like a lot of, I mean, we have fabulous public transport. I've
Mhm.
honestly, I'm yet to see a country where there's better public transport, like in terms of efficiency, cost, and everything. And here, when a bus is like a couple minutes late, people already get stressed out. And then there's other countries like Nigeria where the bus only leaves when it's full, and that can sometimes take 2 or 3 hours, which puts you in a completely different spot, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, so instead of getting stressed out, what can I learn from being in Nigeria? Well, you could be patient, you could bring a book with you, you could be grateful, you could use these moments to take a couple of deep breaths, and you feel better because why bother about something that you anyway can't change? And
Mhm.
that was an extremely important shift in the way of thinking that I had to learn because I grew up with a lot of like complaining about other people instead of
Mhm.
first looking inwards. So yeah.
Right. I grew up in New York, so can relate to that. I remember when I was in Vienna, one of the tour guides told a story that an older gentleman was lost, and they said, if you beep the horn, we'll be able to find you faster because everyone will call in and complain about you beeping your horn. So,
Well,
and they were able to find this poor older man. So I relate to Vienna in that way from
yeah.
being from New York. Everybody's complaining about everything. So I guess speaking of Vienna, I went the first time I went, it was only for a day and it was on a holiday. So everything was shut down and I couldn't experience anything. The second time around, it was Easter, but things were slightly more open than this other holidays. And I had a couple of days to really enjoy it. And I fell in love with the city. But it was colder than other places than I was visiting around the same time. So you mentioned that you didn't want to go to Boston because of the Boston cold weather.
Yeah.
You went to all these different places, had all these different experiences
Mhm.
that helped you grow and learn. What brought you back to Vienna?
So my family is here, and it's good to have a place that you can call home,
Hmm.
where you know you can always come back to, where you can be yourself, where um, just everything is in place, where you don't, like when I'm abroad sometimes and I'm renting places on a certain platform whose name I don't want to promote. Uh, you have to look for things and check if everything is all right, and then you find a couple little creatures in there that you shouldn't, and so on, right? And that can get tiring a bit. Like, it's just having a place where, like, that's my stuff. That's me. That's nice. It's nice to have. And I haven't found another place yet where I would get the same price and quality that I have here.
Right.
So, which I love the beach, for example, like, and in winter I'm just often gone because it's too cold. I think I would very much prefer to live somewhere else, but I just haven't made up my mind.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't like the cold either, but I'm also not a beach person, and I'm about to move to a location where there's nothing but beaches. So I still got a little bit of ways to go to also figure out where my other quote unquote other home will be. Do you Another thing that you hear all the time when someone accomplishes a lot and achieves all the dreams is this concept of imposter syndrome. Now, I don't personally experience that because I feel like I worked hard and I deserve to be here because I put in the effort. I didn't just come in here out of nowhere.
Mm.
Do you feel that you get imposter syndrome at all at times? Or do you feel, no, I put in the work, I got my degrees, I did all the things I was supposed to do, and I deserve to be here?
I think I definitely got it at some times, but I refuse to name it as such.
Mhm.
Probably slightly denying the reality. And so, but honestly, like once I hit 30, there was a different confidence that came with it, which was interesting.
Mhm.
And so now it almost never happens. And I'm like, no, it's fine. If I'm here, I'm supposed to be here, and it's
Mhm.
okay. But it took some time to own that and learn that, and yeah.
So you've owned and almost overcome the imposter syndrome, or it looks like
Mhm.
you have overcome it. You have run a company that seems to respect and value your employees that you have, where you value yourself, you value the world around you and all that it can give you. So let's talk about the work life balance a little bit and how that's achieved. Because I think for Americans in particular, it's very difficult concept for people to understand, where I have become a little bit more strong and like, no, I'm sorry. The work hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And of course, there's always exceptions where I will need to put in some extra effort at certain times, but I've set my boundaries of what's healthy for me. And I'm looking at other peers of mine that I'll get texts that they're working until 10 o'clock every night, that they're working Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm like, but just stop. And if the work doesn't get done, then it sends a signal to your boss that they need to hire some help for
Yeah.
you. We can't be saving everyone all the time.
Yeah.
We have to save ourselves.
Yeah.
And my grandmother always uses the example of when you're on an airline, they always tell you put the mask on yourself before you help other people mentality. So is it just an American problem? Do you feel like in different places in Europe that you've traveled that there's also a struggle to achieve a proper work-life balance?
I mean, honestly, it's in a lot of places in the world. And, for example, Japan being extreme with like suicides and so on. I mean, in Japan, you have the rule you do not leave before your boss leaves, right? Which can be, I would say, even from our point of view, a very toxic culture. Um, I very much would be encouraging people like you do. However, a lot of people have a lot of things to deal with that then fuel into them overworking themselves, right?
Right.
So you do have a group of people that overwork themselves because that's the example they grew up with,
Right.
right? And then obviously there's quite some active work required to get out of that, which is possible, but you gotta want it. For a lot of people, that change comes when either they lose a relationship or when they become a mom or a dad. That's when they notice, oh, damn it, I have to change something. The other aspect is definitely a lot of times that not enoughness feeling. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't put in those extra hours, I'm not enough, right? And what I'm also seeing with a lot of like big corporations, especially, even though they're now prioritizing health and well being a lot more, what they're rewarding is not that. because the person who gets the promotion tends to be the one who's overworked.
Right.
And it never gets said during a promotion, oh, look at, what that person accomplished in as little hours as 30 hours a week. And, they went golfing twice a week and learned a language. No, that's not what gets shown. And so that's why there's still a misfit between, corporations offering all these like benefits and then the real effect of it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So what do you say, what's your advice to the companies on how to deal with that versus what would your advice be to those, I guess, advice of employers versus employees? How would you tell each side to look at helping create a more healthy work-life balance?
So, I mean, it all starts with the leaders, as change starts with the leaders, and you have to train them and make sure that they are confident, because a lot of leaders aren't confident. A lot of people become managers and leaders because they've been good in their job, but not because they've been good people managers. Mm-hmm. So there's training needed there, and that training for these people is not done through like once a quarter leadership training days. That's ongoing work, ongoing coaching, right? And very genuine and honest reviews and feedback. And the one thing that I, for example, do with my employees is like I tell them, especially the new ones, is like, look, right now your contract is XYZ amount of hours. If you notice you're starting to work more than XYZ amount of hours, tell me, let me know. Because either I say, well, at this point, there's no over hours. You can then use them another day, or we can talk about, does it make sense for you to work 20 hours now and 10 hours next week? But I'm pretty open and straightforward. So that's what I would tell corporations, like, be straightforward. Don't do these all-in contracts. Like, obviously the all-in contracts are very convenient for companies, but it's not healthy for employees, right? Mm-hmm. And force them to take their holidays. I've overheard this conversation 3 weeks ago from a fairly large rooftop construction company here. And they were saying that they were almost priding themselves in their employees getting benefits if they haven't used their holidays or sick leave. I'm like, what the heck? So you literally force people that when they're sick to go into the office, because then they know they're going to get more money, which puts everybody in danger. And they don't take a break. So, and even new hirees are always surprised when they say that when they're the first time sick. I'm like, I don't want to hear from you until you're fully well again. And they're like, no, I'll get back to work tomorrow. I'm like, no, you're gonna like relax right now and shut your laptop and get well, right? But like the managers and executives, they need to learn that. But the way to learning that is not the easiest, because it needs introspection, reflection, and dealing with a lot of office politics on top of that is not the easiest thing.
Right. I've watched people that they'll have the conversation with me about, oh, if you need to take a couple of days, go for it, totally understand. And then you find out that that same manager that would tell me that, or tell someone else that, will be trash talking about that employee, whoever took the days, because they suggested it to other people. And then it's like, oh, well, I guess when they tell me I should take the days and encourage me, I shouldn't really do that, because it's apparently a bad look when I take advantage of the opportunity that they give me. And it's a lot of weird games that people play, but I also feel like it's a generational thing that it's up to. I feel like it's going to start evolving and changing for the future generations to benefit from, and that we're kind of our generation is starting that ball rolling, so to speak, of getting us to a healthier place. Because everyone that I've dealt with that up until my job prior to COVID was not cool at all with anybody working from home for any capacity, and thought it was a sign of weakness. And it's like, no, I'm actually more productive because I don't have people coming into my office every 2 seconds asking me a question. I can get work done. And COVID has shown us that can be the case. So I think I wish a world pandemic didn't take it for some people to just calm down in that regard. But do you think it's going to take another cataclysmic thing for the culture to continue shifting in a healthier balance? Or do you think slowly it's just going to continue on this evolution?
It's probably going to be the slow change, right? And if I remember correctly, it was Nathaniel Brandon's books, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, where he mentions this, where managers were asked, what do you think would increase the trust of your employees in you? And everybody responded almost the same thing, which was pretty much walk my talk.
Yeah.
It's the simplest thing, but we see often the hardest, because when people are under stress, they lose self-control. If people have a lot of decisions to make and no willpower left in the end to work on themselves, and they spend more than a third at work or sometimes even a half, well, where are they going to let out all the stress? Of course it's going to be work, right? Mm-hmm. And most of them will not have the willpower then anymore to say, is like, you know what, hold on. Okay, I was about to say this, but I just told that person this. Let me not say anything right now.
Right.
Because then also people want to fit in. Remember when complaining is a way of fitting into the tribe. Right. So I would then risk being excluded from the tribe if I do not continue being who I am, because that's what people rewarded me for so far. Mm-hmm. So it can be quite complex.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I keep taking these long pauses because I'm just taking in everything that you're saying. So
that's okay.
Thank you for all of it, because everything that you're saying is absolutely true and interesting, and it's making me reflect back on my own experiences. And I'm very slowly getting to a place in my career now where I can be a manager of people. And I'm taking in what you're saying of, okay, well, now how am I going to apply this to the next opportunity that I have to be in a position where I can reach down a helping hand? Because the way that my philosophy of how I try to go, and this is Broadway actress Laura Benanti, this is something that she always said when they're like, how do you deal with competing against other women in these audition spaces? And she said, well, if I look at life as climbing this mountain, and if while I'm climbing the mountain, I'm spending the entire time clawing other people out of the way, then no one's ever going to get to where they're going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my blinders on and I'm going to get to where I'm going. And then once I get to my spot, I go and I reach down and I pull other people up with me.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's how I try to operate.
Yeah.
And that helps in the work-life balance and making sure that the people coming up behind me and that I manage continue to have that work-life balance. But I feel like it's a lot of things that a lot of other people forget about. And when I even speak with certain family members of mine that are trying to give me that advice, it's, well, why aren't you trying to be the top, like the director of whatever? And it's like, no. It's not about competing with other people to get to whatever, especially because I'm in a collaborative space. It's about what can I do to get my job done and then help out everybody else when I can. Again, putting the mask on your own face before you go and put it and help other people when they need it. Do you feel that when you are encouraging of this work-life balance, when it's starting from the top with you, that mentality is trickling out to everybody else a little bit more easily and efficiently? Or do you find that there's still people that you've got to train to think a little bit differently in spite of their upbringings?
It definitely trickles down, and then obviously everybody's is brought up differently, right? So you might still have to put some effort more on other people, but that's natural. Mm-hmm. And it's always a moment also for reflection, right? Mm-hmm. So but if you give people the permission to focus on their health and well-being first, they will, like I know some people would be worried about taking advantage of it and something, but I've never seen that. People want to do good and they always want to do their best.
Right.
And I think a lot of times, a lot of managers and executives haven't worked in their own trauma, and they have this feeling, you can't trust employees. You can only trust them in the office, right? But that's their own issues that they need to deal with. And that's not going to take 2 months. It's going to probably take 1 or 2 years of, but very profound therapy, right? but they might just never have that, right?
Right.
And then if one of these people is somebody who brings a lot of money to the company, it gets even trickier,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
I have taken up a lot of your time, so there's only a couple questions left that I will bother you with. My big thing of we've talked over, obviously, you are a very impressive, intelligent person. I'm not even going to say woman because that's irrelevant. You are a very impressive person. Um, what has been, if you were to take a look at your life so far up to this point, what accomplishment are you most proud
Thank you for your kind words.
of?
I think really understanding how the mind works and then changing my own behavior in so many aspects and my own ways of thinking in so many aspects. And with that, kind of like setting a living proof that you can really create the life if you want. Like you have everything within you. There's nothing external that you need. And once you learn to leverage that power, the world is yours. And that's the beauty. But I think a lot of people are really afraid of that because they could be really, really powerful in a good way, right? But once you know that, you also kind of figured out life. There's always going to be ups and downs, obviously. But yeah, I think really like accomplishing that over and over again is what I'm really proud of because it can be really hard work. And that's something I think I only get mirrored back with my work with other people because other than that, I just take it for granted. And I tend to have people ask me, sometimes tell me, oh, you're so nonchalant about this, right? Or you so easily talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. It's actually quite a bit of work. So yeah.
I feel like sometimes you forget you need someone else to hold the mirror up and be like, "Hello."
Oh yeah.
Because for me,
Yeah.
when people tell me things that they are impressed by what I do, I'm like,
Yeah.
"This is just me going through life and living life.
Yeah.
I don't really
Yeah.
think of it as a big deal, but it is a big deal, and I think it's important to look in the mirror and be like, "I'm awesome," which
Yeah.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
Um, well, okay, so I only have a couple rapid fire
Yeah.
questions and then I will let you go. What is your favorite food city?
First thing that came to my mind is uh, Tokyo, but I've only been once. But I love Japanese food in Japan.
Hmm.
Um, and then I love Addis Ababa for Ethiopian food. I really love Ethiopian food. So yeah.
Ooh, okay. Haven't, that's a new one. Uh, when you plan a vacation, do you prefer one that you can relax or be active?
I do a mix of both.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And what is the city that you've learned the most in?
I would go back probably. Oh, hold. Hard tie between Lagos in Nigeria and Dubai in the UAE because
Okay.
both have been very impactful places for me,
Right.
and I have much appreciation for both, and I still cherish coming back to both places a lot.
That's awesome. You do get to go back
Yeah.
often? That's amazing. And then my last question for you, if there are other people that are inspired by you and want to learn more or get more advice on your thoughts and your feelings and opinions, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So the easiest is always LinkedIn. And I tell people if you want to connect directly, just add a message. Like just tell me a little bit so I know because I get so many requests and I just don't respond anymore to requests without a message. And then obviously Instagram, we're all on that. So that's Pamela Wagner official because my first and last name was already taken. And so yeah. But yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then obviously there's different websites of my agency and so on. But those two are the main ones.
Perfect. And then hopefully we can connect after and I'll get those links and I'll put them in the
Sure.
description of this episode. Thank you so much, Pamela, for this conversation. I feel like we could have a part two and really go in depth, but we'll leave this as it is for now. And I really appreciate meeting you and getting to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much too. It was a pleasure and really good questions.
Pamela certainly made me sit and think for a moment about my preconceived notions about women in the workplace and expectations of ourselves in the workplace. My hope is to hear all your thoughts on how to navigate your lives in the workplace, how you manage to do that. As always, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for all the fun journeys and lessons learned on my big adventure called life. For more information on the different cities discussed, check out the blog posts on hieatexplorelove.com, posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Until next week, remember to eat well, explore the world, and love yourself. See you next time. This episode is produced, scripted, and edited by me, Ashley. Special thanks to Sarah Mienka.